Welcome to the Video Strategy Podcast. My name is Jackson Kingsley, and I'm here with Dorrien Smith. And the goal of this show is to give you as much value as possible, sharing our lived experiences from in the field over the last 13 years, so that ultimately you can attract more of the right clients at the right prices and run more fulfilling businesses. So the core focus of today's show is we're going to be talking about the research process, but not the one that you think. And I'm also going to be just introducing 8 of the core, most important frameworks that we've distilled down over the years that will have the most direct impact for you personally.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to get into it today. After spending decades as a cinematographer for the likes of National Geographic and other huge brands, I have now become a video strategist where I help my clients overcome their biggest challenges. This has been a huge shift for me in the last couple of years, and I'm excited to share our experiences to help you guys do something similar. So before we get into the 8 frameworks, just want to quickly ask Jackson a question. I heard you were at an event recently.
The last couple of days I've been in Birmingham in the UK and speaking at the photography and video show and had a real blast there. We had some of our members come along too, which was great. So we had an in-person meetup. But I was invited to speak on the topic of the business side of video production. So the thing that we focused on was primarily the research process, which is more of what I want to share with you guys today. But also I introduced the 8 frameworks. Having coached over 800 video agency owners over the last 8 years and having generated over $20 million in video sales, we decided to distill down and figure out what are the most important frameworks, what are the pieces of the puzzle that make the biggest difference to a business's success. Because one of the key things that I've always found is that it's not your creative or technical skills, it's not a lack of talent or effort that is holding people back. It's a lack of structure and systems. And this is the piece that differentiates businesses at 2, 3, 4, 5K per month and those doing 20, 50, 100K per month, is that they have the right systems and structures in place. So I wanted to figure out exactly what those pieces are for video agencies, and we've distilled it down to 8 pieces. And at the end of the show, I'll give you clear directions on how you can get access to all 8 of those. I put it into an amazing 30-page document that outlines exactly what they mean and how to use them. I see a lot of people who are struggling when it comes to their outreach. They're sending hundreds or sometimes even thousands of messages, cold outreach or warm outreach, and they're not getting the sort of response rates that they want. Well, this research process is the answer to that. This research process is how we went from a 1.5% response rate initially to an 8% response rate in a particularly tough industry. The research process is also how I managed to land a $25,000 paid case study within just 2 weeks of starting an agency from zero, which is what I did recently in this experiment. The research process is also responsible for ultimately increasing the lifetime value of our clients. We're able to have more fulfilling, sustainable long-term relationships as a result of going through this process. And perhaps most importantly, what I love is that it really establishes you as an expert. You're not going in completely cold every time for every new person that you speak to. When you do the research process, the people you're speaking to start to see you as an insider. And this is the difference between being a technician or vendor in your business and being a strategist and a partner. So this is a foundational piece that will unlock the rest of the 8 frameworks. The other 7 rather. So, over the coming weeks, we're going to be going into those other 7 frameworks, but I really want to hone in today and focus on this first one because it's going to have a profound impact, not just sort of setting the scene for what's to come, but the actions that you can take off the back of this research process can directly link to landing more clients and getting more meetings booked.
So when you say research, what do you actually mean by that? Because, for years, I thought I was doing research. I looked at people's websites, I researched them online, I looked at their LinkedIn, I looked at other people, and sometimes I would even type into AI, like, what are the typical problems of this kind of industry? And then I would put a pitch to get together, and I would put everything together, thinking I could just nail the call as soon as I go in. Is that what you're talking about, or is it something else?
So there's an important distinction here, and what you're describing is the more typical way of going about doing research. And most people are doing like Google, AI, LinkedIn, using these as tools to look up the companies before they speak with them. But I propose that there's a different way. And what we've been finding that works really well for us is not just to rely on what's publicly available. And just when we use something like ChatGPT, the trouble is the information that you're using is the same information that every other competitor has access to. And it's not even all that intelligent in terms of the quality of the information it's giving you is pretty average. I'd say by definition, it's an average result. So what we want to do is think about this differently. And instead of using Google AI, these tools, we want to get in front of the right decision makers and ask them a really good set of questions. So when I started my agency from zero recently as part of an experiment, we had no case studies, no leads, no existing clients. So I was quite literally starting from zero. The very first thing that I did was I went about booking a handful of good quality calls with decision makers within this niche. And the responses that I got from people, the information that I gathered was night and day different to what I was able to find on Google and on AI. And that was the reason I was able to go from a 1.5% response rate, trying to use generic information, to an 8% response rate using what I found from my first-hand research calls. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, that all sounds really good in theory, but like, how do you actually get these people on the call, and like, how do you reach these high-level decision makers? Like, how do I not just be, I'll be worried I'll be wasting their time or spending their time, or how do I actually talk to these people?
Yeah, great question. So the way that you frame the call is really, really important. And before we go into what you say to them, just before, the first step that I found nice and simple, and not to overthink this one, is just to make a list of key decision makers within your desired niche. So identify people who are ideally CEOs, founders, partners, people at the top of the business who are going to have control over the strategy and direction of the business overall. Those are the people that you want to be speaking to. Make a list of 10 to 20 people and just start working through them, reaching out to them with a very simple message. And then this is the next key bit, is the frame. It's the way that you communicate with them. So the frame is something that we set when we're on every single call. And if we don't set the frame, then we go into what I call the default frame. And the default frame is that of vendor or salesperson. So if you just go onto a call and you start talking, the other person is most likely going to be the one asking the questions, and you're going to be the one answering. And in turn, you end up pitching, selling, trying to justify your prices and do all the classic things, the classic pitfalls that most people get stuck in. Whereas when you consciously set the frame, you take control of the conversation. Now, the beautiful thing about the research call process is that it's not a sales call. And this is a really important shift. The research call process, you say something like this: I'm looking to branch into your niche. I'd love to understand your current challenges to help us position our offering, but more importantly, see what we can do to help you. I've got 5-10 years experience in video and marketing, and I'd be happy to share what insights and value that I can. So no pitch, just learning. Either way, I'll make sure you get massive value from the call. So Will, can you see how that approach is very non-salesy, and it's quite hard to say no to as well? You're not coming in saying, I
Yeah,
just want to take
I
your
think
time.
that's
It's
really
about
nice
you.
because you're offering value too. As an experienced video person, you're offering them your insights. And this is not a pitch. You're saying, hey, if there's a way I could help you, I'd love to show you how, but I'm not asking for anything. Essentially, it's an offer as well as an ask, which is really interesting. Something that really helped me at the beginning of this process too was actually contacting friends and family first. People who might be more willing to get on a call, or even friends of friends, family of family. We're only 7 degrees of separation, right? So we can absolutely make a list of all these people who are difficult to contact. But even if you can get 1 or 2 people who can start giving you insights into that niche, then you can start using their answers into your messaging to then attract the more hard to reach people. At least that's what I was found. But I was amazed at the people I was able to talk to. Like when I first moved back to the UK, I was looking into getting more into like natural history stuff. But and after a few weeks, I was talking to people who were doing these huge like deep sea oil projects across the world, and even people high up at Blue Planet and all this kind of stuff. And again, that was just through making a call and making a call and making a call. The biggest thing that I learned was not Googling. Get off the computer as much as you can and get on the phone as much as you can. And at the same time, you never know, at the end of the call, you might be saying, okay, so do you know anybody else who might be interested in talking? And then there you go. You got your next warm lead.
Were there any like particular insights or takeaways that like stand out, come to mind when you think about those calls that you're having?
I think honestly, I think I went in with a lot of nervousness that I was going to waste their time, but people love talking about their businesses. People really do, and if you go with an open frame of mind and a friendly manner, and a curious manner, use your documentary interview skills, use your curiosity. People love to talk, and again, I couldn't believe I was talking to like senior producers of Blue Planet and like really high level people, and they were like, "Huh, this sounds interesting." Let's have a chat, even if it's 10 minutes, just anything, whatever you can do to get your foot in the door. The key is, just getting that crack in the door, to start.
So to break it down, the first piece to remember is that the research calls are not sales calls, which brings a lot of confidence and gets you into the room with people. And the way they answer your questions is different than if they feel like it's a sales call. The second key piece to remember is the whole point of this is that you're building fluency. So we want to be writing messaging and marketing, and we want to be communicating with people on a level where they feel like we're an insider, that we understand their world and what's going on. Ideally, our messaging and marketing wants to resonate with people in a way that almost feels like we're reading their mind. And what I found was when I started in this new niche recently and we started working with finance companies, the language that was coming up was really difficult for me to connect with. They were using things like HNWIs, which is high net worth individuals. There was LPs, limited partners, AUM, assets under management. And at first, I really felt like an outsider. But after about 4 or 5 calls, I started to know the lingo. And they could see that too. I could see the way that people were connecting with me was different to how it was just 4 calls previously. And this is really, really important because had I not gone through this process, I would have still been communicating like an outsider. Now, that was just 4 or 5 calls in. After about 10 to 12 calls, I really got to the point where I could start to predict what people were going to say even before they said it, which is really interesting because the whole point of these conversations is to diagnose their business problems so that you can have a really strong understanding and build a lot of trust before then presenting a solution. And I found that the more I could cut through the noise because I knew what they were going to say, the better the questions I could ask, the faster we got through the calls, the more trust we built, and ultimately the better the solutions that I put forward were. So fluency is the second key piece of this.
So I've got a question about that. So, after spending years and years as a cinematographer, really my end goal is really just to be filming amazing things with amazing people. That's my end goal. All these calls sound like a bit of a pain. So is it worth it, I guess?
Yeah, 100%. So I'll give you a quick story on this one. So there was one guy called Joel who was a leader in the finance space. He ran about 5 or 6 different businesses, and it was tough getting through to him. So there were a lot of messages, a lot of back and forth by email, then by WhatsApp, and it was super frustrating. And I was wondering whether it was worth it or not. But eventually I just decided, okay, I'm going to offer to pay for his time. So offered him £250 for an hour of his time, jumped on a call pretty quickly after that. And then that 1 hour, I learned more than probably any other hour I'd spent in my business in years. It was best £250 that I've ever spent because he gave me the ins and outs and the exact playbook of how the industry worked. I asked about his challenges. I asked about market challenges. I asked about different sub niches within the niche. So I found out that there is the finance niche, and then you've got VCs, venture capitalists, and then you've got IFAs, financial advisors. Within financial advisors, you've got different subcategories, like people who are older, who are looking to sell their books and they just want quality clients. And then you've got people who are younger, who are looking for higher lead flow. They're looking for quantity at the moment. So these are really important distinctions. And then one of the best questions I asked him was, if you were me, if you were in my shoes, how would you go about marketing to someone like you? And he gave me the playbook. So that was one of the most powerful calls I feel like I've ever done in the business. And I took all those insights and I plugged it into AI and I studied it very carefully. And then that really helped inform all of my messaging and marketing, which just skyrocketed my results.
I think that's so cool. Yeah, that blew my mind the first time you said that you paid somebody for a call. And this is a way, to get to those hard to reach people sometimes. And then I love the audacity of just asking him, like, how would you market to you, basically? And then they can give you a step by step on their terms how you'd actually get there. I think that's really, really interesting. And you mentioned you use ChatGPT or AI after this process, but what I'm learning is essentially AI is like a megaphone, right? If you put good inputs, you get good outputs. But if you put in general inputs, you get general outputs. And general outputs are not going to land the key clients that you really want. So my follow-up question would be, like, again, that does seem like it's quite a bit of time. And that's not a lot of time behind the camera or on set or, doing the things that many of our listeners might love. So as far as like time put into this process versus value received from doing great shoots, great clients, and all of that, can you walk me through like a little bit of kind of the ratio there?
Yeah, for sure. And I think maybe what you're alluding to here is that, like, when you're a busy business owner, you've got so many things going on. How do you justify or value equation it in your own mind as to whether it's worth investing into doing this? So the actual process itself only took me a few days. And initially, you're just building a list of people to reach out to. You're making some connections, booking some calls. The calls last an hour each. But you mentioned AI as well. And this is worth bringing up because I'm sure you, me, everyone listening is using AI in some way or another in their business. And the key thing that you said is that AI is like a megaphone, and it can be used in this process to speed things up, but also get a lot more value out of the calls that you're doing. So just firstly, I'd say when not to use AI. So like I mentioned earlier, you don't want to use AI to start the research process because it's just going to give you generic answers. But if you mix it with what we're talking about here, you take the transcripts, you take the words from the calls that you're having with prospects and you plug them into AI and you ask it to summarize what it finds, and you ask it to pick out key language, phrases, sentences, and build a document that can help with your marketing in the future, you get something really, really powerful. And then when you do that again and again, you can start building up projects within AI that are a go-to resource specifically for your niche. And that's what I have now. I've got dozens of transcripts all plugged into AI. And when I need new marketing ideas, whether it be for my cold outreach or my website, or I'm creating a lead magnet, or you name it, really, I've got this incredible resource that's unlike anything else that other people have access to. So that is a way that you can then magnify the effort. You can get compound results over time. The more you add to it, the more interesting the insights and the more value that you can extract.
The more you can do at the beginning, the much better the output at the end. So like you said earlier, a few days of research, a few days of calls, a few days of, scripting and AI and whatever, getting your messaging right. Within a few weeks, you can start landing contracts that are way bigger, way better, and way more fulfilling than you would have done otherwise if you just waited around for some employer or network or brand to give you a call.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the results speak for themselves. Like I was saying, went from a 1.5% reply rate to an 8% reply rate. Like if we had just a 20% increase, we went from 1.5 to 1.8%, that would be good. but we're talking about more than 400% increase in reply rate here. And then the other thing is then when you get on the calls with people, the way they are communicating with you is totally different than if they're just seeing you as some outside vendor and they're like, oh, I've got to explain all over again, what this and this means. Like, you don't build the same level of trust and rapport with people. And then ultimately also you're able to charge significantly more too, because that's what experts do. You're not just there to create a video for them. You're there to diagnose their business, find out what's really going on, and then prescribe a solution that's actually going to get them results and move the needle forward, which for me is the most exciting part of running a business.
So yeah, heck yes. So, you mentioned at the beginning you had no case studies, and I feel like a lot of people on this watching this may not have something. So they may have hundreds of case studies of being a talented, craftsperson, talented artist, talented videographer, editor, producer, whatever. But they might, the question is, the client says, "What else have you done? What else have you done like this?" And maybe they've picked a niche that they haven't had a ton of, case studies in. How do you get that first research, second research call, third research call, and even sales calls when you haven't got a project yet?
That's a great question. And actually, the whole process of sales and marketing really is about pre-handling objections. So you're preempting the problems that could come up and you're handling them before, because the earlier you handle an objection, the easier it is to overcome. So in this case, you're saying the objection could be that, oh, do you have any specific relevant work within our field? But what we're doing here is we're pre-handling that. We're preemptively coming in and we're saying, look, we have value to offer. I've got 5-10 years of experience working in video production and marketing. We've helped hundreds of businesses. We've solved these kinds of problems. So we're building our credibility and our expertise there. But we're saying, look, I'm now looking to branch into your niche to get a better understanding of the market and of your business specifically. Okay, so we're moving into this research process with a very transparent, very honest frame of this is exactly what we're trying to do. We're just looking to better understand your niche because we haven't yet got any case studies, but we do have a ton of experience in these other areas. So you're still building the credibility and the expertise, and they're going into it knowing this is why. They're seeing you as, oh, here's someone that I could really learn something from, and we can help each other out. So it's a mutually beneficial dynamic.
I think that's what's so cool too, because it takes so much of the pressure off. You don't have to be pitching. You don't have to be constantly proving yourself. You're really just there to ask questions, and they want to answer them most of the time. It was shocking to me how many people were just like, yeah, sure. Which is really, really cool.
Yeah. People love to talk about their business. People love to talk about their business, but they don't like to be sold to. And that's exactly what this dynamic creates.
Yeah, is lovely, lovely. So you told me the other day, I don't know if you have it in front of you or it's easy, but the difference between your first message and your message a few months later. Like you mentioned that maybe you start loosely general, and then the more you refine, you're able to be much more specific. While you're finding that, a quick example for me was, at first I talked about how great I was as a videographer. And then I shifted to, I work a lot in sustainable food, and now I know that their biggest challenges are reach, recruitment, and revenue. They either need to tell people don't know about them, or they're struggling hiring good team members, or they're struggling making bank. And now I can lean into either of those in my messaging, and I've got my response rate has gone so much higher. So that's general terms, but Jackson, I'm curious if you have, I don't know if you have that up yet, but the subject line from the first one to the last one is fascinating.
Yeah, well, it's more that the hook I wanted to share, because I think everyone uses a similar approach, which I was using too, which was, hi, are you looking to attract more clients with video? Or something to do with storytelling, or just very sort of surface level. We're making a guess. We're saying, right, they want to attract more clients, or maybe they want more video. So our hook, our subject line, the message revolves something around that. So before, and what was getting a 1.5% reply rate was, hi, you're looking to attract more clients. But after going through the research calls and refining it, what we landed on was, hi, we work with IFAs dealing with regulatory treacle and want to attract HNWIs with 1 million plus AUM. So just to
So
just spell
different.
that out, it's so different, isn't it? But
It's crazy.
just to spell it out. So we work with independent financial advisors dealing with regulatory treacle, which was a term that kept coming up in our calls. That was their way of explaining the challenge of all the paperwork and the regulatory compliance challenges that they were dealing with. And then attract more HNWIs, which is high net worth individuals with 1 million plus AUM, which means that people have £1 million plus in assets under management that they're looking to invest with them. And so that there is just the perfect example of insider language, which clearly stands out from all the other generic stuff that they're receiving on a day-to-day basis. And that's what they've told us as well directly.
And you never would have gotten that from Googling or AI or whatever. And it's funny now because I'm getting sales emails all the time, and it's hilarious seeing you can see how the AI is working, and you see how general it is and how pointless it is, and it just doesn't land or resonate. So some people on this call, I know a lot of my friends back in LA, the bottom has just fallen out of the industry, right? There's all these incredibly talented people out there who just aren't finding work. Some people might listen to this and say, okay, that's all well and good, but like, I need money now. I need money soon. Like, what would you say to those people? Like, is this research process still valuable?
I'd say get started on this as soon as humanly possible, because one of the short-term results that we had from this process alone was landing a $25,000 paid case study. And reason being was reaching out to people within my network and network who I had at least a little bit of connection with. Some trust and rapport was there, which is good because that's a shortcut to be able to move along with the process. So reaching out to people, conversation with one particular financial advisor, I go in, use the exact language that we're talking about here today, and frame it as looking to build a case study for their business. And that turned into a $25K deal. And the key was that the frame that I was using was very non-salesy, but is also the exact frame that you need and has all the prerequisites for a really good client engagement. So you're building trust, building rapport, you're showing you're not there to just sell to them. You've got genuine concern, care, and curiosity, which are important. And you're taking the time to diagnose their business. Now, when you spend 45 minutes or an hour just there understanding someone's business and diagnosing their problems, in a lot of cases, you're going to find, I've got some ideas of how I can help with this. Would it be worth having another conversation? And I can put forward some ideas to help you solve XYZ problem. And that's what I did. Alex was the first one, turned in 25K deal, and then it's happened multiple times after that. So I would suggest whether you're looking for a short-term win or long-term building out the sort of strength of your overall marketing, your messaging, your business, this can do both. This can lead to immediate deals, and it can also improve the overall efficiency of your entire workflow, your funnels, and your outreach.
Yeah, I mean, it's wildly valuable. I mean, I remember I was in a similar boat a year or two ago. I was looking to get money fast and trying to figure it out. And do I keep freelancing? Do I keep going on the system that has got me into this bad situation that it has? Or do I start the process of actually helping people with the problems that they're actually going through? And that's where, if you look at it over a 1 year, 2 year, 5 year, projection, which is going to get you better results? The one when you actually do the research, actually talk to real people, actually create solutions to the problems they actually have, or just keep being a supplier. And like you said, Jackson, you in like a few months, you're able to land 25K, and plan further to that, 100K after that. It's like, yeah, I would have never been able to land that as a solo freelancer, doing the process I used to do.
Yeah. I mean, everyone listening here, didn't start your video business just to be fighting for 2K projects with 19 rounds of feedback. This is the route that lays the foundation, or the roots, if you like, lays the roots and the foundation to be able to have that kind of business where you're seen as an expert, where your messaging actually gets heard and gets the response rates that you want, gets you in the door, gets you in the right meetings with the right people, and then ultimately enables you to close those higher ticket deals, especially when you take the time to really diagnose someone's problems. Because the bigger the problem that you solve, the more you can charge. And so if you're just always focusing on creating video is a relatively small problem for a business. If someone's thinking we need a video, then they're going to have a preconceived idea of what that's worth to them. Maybe 2K or 5K, whatever the going rate is. It becomes a commoditized product. But if we're going in and we're really taking the time to understand the customer, to diagnose their biggest problems and challenges, then that's where we're able to create real solutions using video that are actually going to drive the needle for their business, which means that we can charge more, which means we can get better results, which means we can create happier customers, which means we get better case studies, and then the cycle continues.
Fantastic. Well, this has got me excited. I've got some more research to do this week, and I've got another call later this week that I'm really excited to do this with. So for everybody out there, Jackson, what are like the next steps? Like, what are the kind of simple steps that they can go from where they're at now and start kind of implementing this as soon as possible?
Yeah, there's two things here. One is, say, take action straight away and go ahead and just map out the next 2 weeks to get 3 research calls booked. This is the challenge that we've set for everyone in our community. I'll leave a link for the community below. It's free if you want to come in and work with other like-minded peers so you can be in this together. But just go out, make a list of 10 to 20 people that you could reach out to. From those 10 to 20, get your first 3 research calls booked. That is the first step. And then the other thing I'm going to leave a link to below is to access the 8 frameworks. So the one that we've talked about today is the first framework. It's the research process. What we're going to be covering over the coming weeks are the other 7. So if you take action in the next couple of weeks, you follow exactly what we talked about here, then you're going to be in a really good place to then go and be able to start implementing the other frameworks that we'll cover later on.
That sounds fantastic. I'm excited about the next few weeks. There's going to be some big ones. Going to see some change happening.
It's going to be good. And I hope to see a lot of you listening in the community. It's a really amazing space. We've got a few hundred members at the moment, and it's growing fast. And it's just a really nice place. Great to be able to connect with other people. And like the event that I've been doing over the last couple of days, we'll be making announcements when we're doing more in the future as well. So I hope to see you there.